Hey there, it's Andre here. Wanted to add a quick note on a few things that you may have been confused about. You may be asking why we changed this from a function to a class. And older versions of Create React App actually started the app with a class instead of a function. Now, this topic of classes versus functions is something that we're going to cover more and more in depth as we get through the course. And especially towards the end when we talk about React hooks. Now, to go through this code, we need to understand a few things. The very first thing is that this syntax of JSX, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, but for now, it looks like everything is just an HTML tag. However, because this is JavaScript, there's a few changes. One is that this class name over here, that's not HTML, is it? And if I hover over this, you see that it's a JSX attribute. You see, because if I used the word class in here, class means something else in JavaScript. It means, well, we're creating a class, right? So JSX uses the syntax of class name to distinguish between what we actually mean, which is the actually giving it an HTML class, versus a class in JavaScript. The other thing are these brackets over here. You see how every time we write these curly brackets inside of our JSX, well, they mean inside of here, anytime you see these curly brackets, whatever's inside is a JavaScript expression. So what does that mean? Well, logo is a variable, which is the logo that we import. This.state.string, well, that's also a variable, which is referring to this state. It's a JavaScript expression. It's something that produces a value. For example, I could have done 4 plus 5 here if I wanted to, because it's a JavaScript expression. Another place that we see this is right here with the onClick. Again, anything around these brackets is a JavaScript expression. So what's in here? There's a function, right? An anonymous function using this arrow syntax that simply calls this.setState. Now, notice here how we don't actually modify this.setState like this.state.string to equal something else like we would normally. And this goes back to the idea that I mentioned previously, which is this unidirectional data flow of React. You see, you're not allowed to modify state in React without calling this method, setState. Now, why is that? Because anytime we change the state, let's say a user clicks that button to change the state to a new string, when that click happens, what happens is React actually intercepts. Because remember, React is the one that's talking to the DOM. It's going to intercept that click. And it's going to report back and say, hey, I just got to click on the DOM. What do I do? Well, in this case, what we're going to say is on click, when the click happens, I want you to update the state. But we're not going to modify the state automatically. I'm going to say, hey, a click happened, state gets updated using setState. And then that change is going to re-render the component so that we can go through this flow again. Again, if we look over here, as soon as this setState gets called, which is when a click happens, well, what's going to happen? This render method gets called again. Why does it get called? Well, because state just got updated. State now is a different thing. And remember, the declarative approach with React is that as soon as state changes, we re-render the component with the new state, which is right here, and we display that. Now, this onClick, is that HTML? Well, if I hover over here, it says, nope, that's a JSX attribute. Again, remember, this isn't HTML. This is JavaScript. We're just mimicking HTML. So if I wanted to say use onClick in HTML, you see that onClick is written like this with no capital C, because in JavaScript we use camel case, it's a capital C. So just like class name was a little bit different than HTML. OnClick is also different. So in React, we can use whatever HTML attributes that we want, like source, like class, like onClick, but sometimes there's these differences like class name or onClick. Now we're going to explore these different attributes throughout the course, but the key thing to remember is that JSX is trying to mimic what HTML does so that we can create that virtual DOM and break down each part of the app into these components that keep getting re-rendered as we update the state using setState. Let's keep going.